Picture this. The one jet the Navy has relied on for nearly every mission is shutting down production next year. And before we talk about how the Rhino has protected the carrier air wing, today's video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. During its long service life, the F-18 Super Hornet, aka Rhino, has had some very big shoes to fill, replacing the F-14 Tomcat, the A-6 Intruder, and even its little brother, the Legacy Hornet. But despite its almost 30 years of service, the Navy had to bend the truth just to get it built. So the question today is, will the rise of drones and 6th generation fighters bring us closer to the end of the Super Hornet era? And will the Navy need to once again pull out the same playbook for its replacement? In this video, we're going to look at the long and sometimes controversial history of the Rhino and the Growler, a story that includes both a Dorito and a Shadow, how its planned replacement, the F/A-XX, keeps getting canceled and then restarted, and we'll tackle the burning question many of us are asking: will the Super Hornet be the last manned fighter for the Navy? Let's take a look, and let's start with some bureaucratic jujitsu. To understand how we got here, we need to go back to the early 90s and the end of the Gulf War. Following that overwhelming victory and the collapse of the Soviet Union, seriously, 1991 was quite a year, many politicians felt that it was time to pay the peace dividend and heavily cut defense spending. The thinking was that since the Cold War was over, military bases could be closed, ships could be decommissioned, squadrons could be disestablished, which led to many experienced aviators leaving the service early to go fly for the airlines, because we'd never again face a peer enemy, right? For the Navy, the timing could not have been worse. It really was the perfect storm. You see, in those days, they were staring at a total procurement apocalypse. Their billion-dollar carrier-based stealth bomber, the A-12 Avenger, which some called the Flying Dorito, had just gone up in smoke. Their infamous F-14s were starting to show their age and costing more and more money to maintain. And the carrier air wing, well, with many Vietnam-era jets on the flight deck, it was in danger of running out of planes entirely. But to fix this, the Navy had a secret. It was a plan so audacious, it borderline cheated the system. Essentially, they went to Congress and said, no, we don't want a new plane. We just want a slightly bigger version of the one we already have. And they called it a derivative. Now, let's just say that they weren't exactly telling the whole truth. To understand what would eventually become the Super Hornet, you have to understand the details of the deal, because by this time Congress was burned out on clean sheet designs that had stayed over budget and under-delivered. So McDonnell Douglas and the Navy performed a masterstroke of marketing. The new jet that was going to cost less and replace so many airframes was labeled as the FA-18E and F. Now, to a politician, well, that looks like a minor upgrade to an already in production jet. The reality, it was a different beast entirely. But still, the votes came in, the budget passed, and the Rhino was ultimately built. So what exactly did this derivative bring to the table? Well, for starters, the Super Hornet is roughly 25% larger than the legacy model that it replaces. Now, that extra real estate allows for 33% more internal fuel, fixing the one thing that pilots hated about the original Hornet, its short legs. Many legacy Hornet pilots have said that flying the original Hornet required you to always keep one eye on that fuel gauge. The Superbug could hold a lot more gas and had a lot more hardpoints for ordnance and drop tanks. But the real hero stat that made the Rhino shine for carrier ops is bring back. You see, a legacy Hornet often had to dump millions of dollars in unexpended ordnance or fuel into the ocean just to be light enough to trap on the wire. The Rhino, it can bring back 9,000 pounds of fuel and ordnance. Now, that's not just good engineering, that's a massive economic win for the taxpayer. And knowing that you can come back with more ordnance also means you can launch with more payload, since you'll know you can return it to the carrier if you don't use it. Now, to carry all that weight and operate off of a carrier flight deck, you need some serious engines. The Super Hornet got bigger and better engines compared to the legacy Hornet, and what a difference they make. With two F414 GE400 engines, the Rhino can push 44,000 pounds of combined thrust in afterburner. Now, it's not faster than the F-14 Tomcat, not by a long shot, but it is reliable. And in the middle of the Pacific, reliability is king. From day one, the Super Hornet was asked to do everything, even air-to-air refueling. And because of this, it never truly excelled at a single mission, but instead has always been a jack of all trades. As a result, the Super Hornet's designers had to make many compromises. Let's talk about those now. But while compromise is sometimes unavoidable in fighter design, it should never be the standard when it comes to protecting your personal data. Which brings us to today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Most of us use public Wi-Fi at airports, cafes, or hotels when we're traveling without thinking twice. But the reality behind the scenes is that public Wi-Fi is often unsecured. Anyone else on that same network can potentially see your data, including your private passwords and exactly what you're doing online. It's like flying a mission over enemy territory without any electronic countermeasures. That's why I use Surfshark. Surfshark is a cybersecurity company that effortlessly secures you online. It's more than just a VPN. It's a tool that protects your connection, your devices, and your personal info all in one place. By masking your IP address, Surfshark makes your online activity much harder to track. One of the best benefits is that one account secures unlimited devices, so your entire household is covered. So secure your digital fleet today. Go to surfshark.com/PilotPhotog or click the link in the description and use code PilotPhotog to get an amazing deal. 4 extra months on Surfshark. They even offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it out completely risk-free. If you look closely at a Super Hornet's wings, something looks off. The weapon pylons are actually canted outward by about 3.5 degrees. Most planes have them straight into the airflow. So why is this on the Super Hornet? Well, it turns out that during testing, they found that ordnance dropped from straight pylons could get caught in the jet's pressure field, tumble, and potentially strike the fuselage. Not a good thing. Rather than redesign the entire jet and to meet deadlines, the fix was just to angle them out. And yes, it does create more drag and hurts top-end speed, but it makes weapon separation safe. It's the ultimate example of pragmatic engineering. Then there was the wing drop. Early Rhinos would suddenly roll up to 40 degrees at high angles of attack, what pilots call alpha. It was nearly a program killer. The fix was a combination of stall strips, wing snags, and a massive update to the flight control software. Once they nailed all those changes down, the Rhino became a low-speed monster. Thanks to those massive leading-edge extensions, it can point its nose in a phone booth, while other jets are still trying to turn. Now, the Super Hornet was able to perform many roles right out of the box, but there was one role that required serious modifications, and it came in the form of a shadow. While the FA-18 Super Hornet eventually became the face of the carrier deck in the 2000s and beyond, the 1990s belonged to a much stranger looking beast, the Lockheed ES-3A Shadow. This jet was converted from the S-3 Viking Subhunter, and the Shadow was really a marvel of compact engineering. Sporting a festoon of over 60 antennas and sensors, it functioned as the carrier's primary spook. Using its Ares 2 suite and AN/ALR 76 ESM system to sniff out enemy radars and communications, and it could do all of this from a quiet, high-endurance loiter. However, the Shadow's career was famously and controversially short-lived. Despite a perfect safety record and critical success in both Bosnia and Iraq, the entire fleet was retired in 1999 after only 8 years of service. Now, this wasn't because the aircraft failed its mission. It was a victim of the harsh realities of procurement. You see, like with so many things going on at the time during the 90s, the Navy found itself in a budgetary vice grip. It suddenly needed $230 million to fund the IT-21 Information Technology Program. At the same time, the FA-18EF, or Super Hornet program, was in its infancy and it required absolute protection from budget threats. So, in a vertical cut, the Navy sacrificed the entire ES-3A community to safeguard the future of the Hornet. Now, I'm working on a video all about the Shadow, so make sure you subscribe to this channel and stay tuned. As a result of these cuts, The Shadows were sent to the boneyard, leaving a decade-long capability gap where carrier groups had to rely on land-based assets like the EP-3E Orion. Now, of course, the Orions are great airplanes, but they did lack the flexibility of carrier-based aircraft. However, despite a 10-year gap, the Super Hornet ultimately did deliver on the electronic warfare or EW capability. This came in the form of the EA-18G Growler, and it really was a game changer. The transition from Shadow to Growler moved the Navy from a philosophy of passive reconnaissance to integrated electronic attack. While the Shadow was a direct support asset, it was a long-endurance sensor that identified threats from a distance, but remained largely defenseless. The Growler, however, is a kinetic scout. By making use of the Super Hornet airframe, the Growler combined the Shadow's detection capabilities with the ability to blind or destroy targets using ALQ-99 jamming pods and, of course, those AGM-88 HARM missiles. It also helped that the Growler was a fighter-based airframe and could keep up with the strike package. Additionally, while the Shadow required a crew of 4 to manage its waterfall of electronic data, the Growler's advanced automation and AN-ALQ-218 suite allowed the crew of 2 to shorten the targeting cycle significantly. At the end of the day, the Navy ultimately chose the Growler not just for the commonality with the Super Hornet fleet, but because the modern battlefield required a platform that could not only hear the enemy, but silence them in real time. So while the War Hoover may be gone, its DNA survives in the high-speed networking of the Growler, and it's really a testament to the Super Hornet. Now, this is an airframe that didn't just stumble into decades of service, but it has earned its longevity through a relentless series of technological evolutions. To understand how this strike platform is still leading the fleet today, we've got to look at the latest and perhaps most significant upgrade. Now here's the reality. The Navy knows that in 2026, a 4th generation airframe needs a 6th generation brain to survive. Enter the Block 3 Modernization program. The heart of this upgrade is the DTPN, or Distributed Targeting Processor Networked. This isn't just a computer, it's a beast pulling some 919 gigaflops of processing power. It's basically a flying data center over the ocean. The system uses open architecture, meaning that the Navy can swap software capabilities like you'd swap apps on your phone. It also takes data from the ASA radar and fuses it into a single godlike picture on a 10 by 19 inch touchscreen, so there's no more squinting at tiny analog gauges or MFDs. And then there's the Silent Hunter mode. Because modern stealth jets can smell radar pulses from miles away, the Navy has brought back the RST-21. This is a passive infrared sensor that doesn't emit any energy. It just looks for the heat of an enemy engine. In 2025, the Navy finalized the software, making the Rhino a premier counter-stealth platform. What this means is that it can track you without you ever knowing it's there. Now, as we've seen given recent events, the mission for the Navy is shifting. We're moving away from desert ground support and back to high-end blue water dominance. And the Rhino just got a big stick. Meet the AIM-174B. This is an air-launched version of the SM-6 missile, and it's massive. In late 2024, Test Squadron VX-9, with their sleek Vandy-1 jet, was seen flying these. This gives the Rhino the ability to reach out and touch high-value targets like tankers or command aircraft at staggering ranges. It's the return of the long-range interceptor mission. And it's powered by Block 3 networking. But despite all these upgrades, here's the bittersweet reality. The assembly line in St. Louis is winding down. By the spring of 2027, after 30 years of continuous production, the last Super Hornet will roll off the line. And once again, the Navy finds itself in a succession crisis. The Super Hornet's planned replacement is the 6th gen FA-XX, but it's currently being starved of cash. While the Air Force's F-47 fighter has been fully funded, the Navy's next-gen jet has been put in a holding pattern with a measly $74 million. And now, while some extra funds have been allocated, This has definitely been a moving target for the Navy. The Pentagon's reasoning: not enough engineers to do both at once. What this means is that the Rhino isn't just a fighter anymore, it's become a bridge. These 30-year-old airframes have to be stripped down and rebuilt through the Service Life Modification or SLM program, which will extend the service lives of these jets from 6,000 to 10,000 hours. But as anyone who's served on the flight deck of a carrier knows, the ocean is a very harsh and unforgiving environment. Because of this, those maintainers on the flight deck and below today are now some of the most important people in all of naval aviation. They're the ones that are keeping a 1990s derivative flying through the salt and steam until probably the 2040s. And it could end up being that the Rhino is the last manned fighter for the Navy. Back when it was introduced, the Rhino saved the Navy when the F-14 had become too expensive and the A-12 was too broken. Now it has to save the Navy one more time while we wait for the 6th generation jet to arrive. And regarding the F/A-XX, here's an interesting play that the Navy could use. And in some ways, it's the same play they ran back in the 90s. What if the Air Force's F-47 could be adapted to become the F/A-XX? I know some of you want a clean sheet design from the ground up, but let's be honest, the Navy missed with the proposed upgrade of the F-14 and the navalized version of the F-22. At some point, the Navy needs a long-range air superiority fighter. And here's the thing, this wouldn't be the first time this happened. Today, the Navy, Air Force, and Marines are all flying the Joint Strike Fighter, aka the F-35 Lightning. And if you turn back the clock, you'll see that the original Joint Strike Fighter was the F-4 Phantom, which also flew for all three services. Although in the Phantom's case, it started as a Navy design. Still, it may be better to get an Air Force airframe adapted to the Navy than miss out again entirely. And here's another reason I think this makes sense. The F-47 contract has gone to Boeing, who, after merging with MacDac, makes the Super Hornet today. It would be good to see that huge plant in St. Louis continue to manufacture airframes, since they've literally built thousands of fighters there. And to those of us who'd love to see one more Grumman cat, including myself, well, Northrop Grumman has its hands full with the B-21 Raider. What do you think? Will the F/A-XX be the last manned fighter? Or is it going to be the Super Hornet? Will the F-47 be adapted for the naval role? How long do you think the Super Hornet's going to serve? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you want to stay updated on the F-47 and the future of F/A-XX, then hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. In the meantime, this is Tog, and now you know. Thanks again to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Go to surfshark.com/PilotPhotog or use code PilotPhotog to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. PilotPhotog.com